Welcome to the Heart of Collaboration. I'm your host, Bernice Belt, and next to me is the great Reverend Dr. Nathan Joyce. He's pastor of Heartland Worship Center here in Paducah, Kentucky. And today we are kicking off our pastor series. And throughout our pastor series, from this day to kingdom come, we don't know, but Pastor Joyce will be co-host, and we will have as our guests local and regional pastors, and maybe even occasionally pastors from outside of our region. But we're so grateful that you have welcomed us into your viewing audience. And today I want to start off by letting Pastor Joyce just have a word with you, and we're going to introduce our special guest, who is Pastor Skip Parsons. He is the pastor of Olivet Baptist Church, also here in Paducah, Kentucky. Pastor Joyce, Pastor Parsons.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be a part of this program and what's going to take place here. And I think we've got some tremendous people who will be a part of sharing their hearts and their minds with us and enlighten us all to be a part of kingdom work. So excited about it.
Absolutely. And Pastor Joyce, I think I shared with you a few months ago that often I ask people, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? We don't mind being like any other show, but we also want to make sure that we touch on some things that interest you, as opposed to us assuming that we give you shows that you would like and accept. And so many people talked about the importance of knowing what's going on in other churches, hearing from pastors, even though they realize this is not a preaching show, they wanted to see and hear from local and regional pastors. Sure. And so this is why this segment or this series, pastor series, was birthed.
Wonderful. And I think that will be a great thing, because even if you go to a church, you're just pretty much aware of what's happening there. And the kingdom is so much broader than that. And God is doing so many other things that we discover the scope of God, the grandness of God, as we find out what's going on in other places.
Well, this pastor series is going to be on one main topic, and that is basically the 21st century church, the relevance, what pastors are doing to maintain that 21st century relevance, so to speak, and then to share some of the things that they're doing inside the walls and outside the walls of their churches. Which brings us to our special guest, Pastor Skip Parsons, as I shared, is pastor of Olivet Baptist Church. Hello, Pastor.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Appreciate it immensely.
Thank you. And your fellow pastor here, he is going to kind of be in charge of this segment. I'll jump in every now and then.
Gotcha.
You'll help me?
Yeah. Well, Skip, tell us a little bit just about your church and that you pastor and some of the work that's going on there right now.
Well, Olivet Baptist Church was founded in 1857, so it's been around for a little while. In fact, this year, we'll be celebrating 50 years at our current location. It was founded with just 29 people, and today, looking back, it has grown. And as many churches, it's gone up, it's gone down. But we are excited about what God's doing today. We're currently looking at our kids' ministries. We do Awana for kids, which we just started here a few weeks ago, and it really impacts our kids. We do it from up to 6th grade, and they get an opportunity to learn who Jesus Christ is. And then once they enter into that relationship with Jesus Christ, it's a discipleship process that they go through, and they get to grow and learn through that process. We also do our Upward for Soccer, and that's a soccer ministry for kids up through 6th grade as well. And we do, it's not a program. You know, so often we call things programs. You know, when I believe the Word of God is involved, it's a ministry. We're actually ministering to the hearts and the souls of the kids and the parents. So we do that in the late winter, early spring, and we enjoy that. We also have our daycare and preschool that we operate. During the school year, we also do before and after school for Concord Elementary. And through that time, and the mission statement for our what we call our Olivet for Kids, that's what our daycare and preschool is called. The mission statement is training up kids to know God. And when you have a preschool child, a 3-year-old, that gets up and sings about God, they know who God is. And so we're trying to set a foundation for them. to help them grow and to help them when they go into elementary school, so they have a strong foundation.
Pastor, is the youth ministry, is it open to youth outside of your church membership?
The Olivet for Kids ministry, yes, ma'am. It's, in fact, I would say that we are licensed to have 110 kids, and I would say that there's only maybe 2 or 3 that are actually church members.
How about that?
That are children of church members. So it really is a community involvement. And that's the same with our soccer, our Upward Soccer. We had a little over 120 kids this past year, this past season. And of those children, I would say approximately only 30 were ours. So it's a great opportunity to impact the community, and that's what we're looking for. The same applies with our Awana ministry. The numbers are a little, it's more like 50-50. But we're looking to do things to reach into the community, not just for ourselves. You mentioned the word several times, both of you, about kingdom. Kingdom is what it's all about. Whether we're in collaboration with other churches, several of the children that come on to our Awana ministry, they are already involved in another church. We want them to stay in that church. That's where God's placed them, and to grow and to serve where they're at. But if we can help and minister to them during that time, that's what kingdom work's all about.
Sure. Well, you mentioned 2 things there that caught my attention. One is to be a church that's been around for a long time, and then focus a lot of what you've focused upon are children, which reminds us that time presses on, whether we want it to or not. Another generation is rising up. And we know that every generation, as culture changes, as time moves forward, there's unique challenges with every generation. What do you see as, especially in our region or in our culture, our nation, what do you see as the primary spiritual challenges and ministry challenges that are particular to this current generation that we're living in, that all churches need to consider?
I think one of the biggest challenges here in our area in Western Kentucky is what the definition of church is. I've talked with many people that were raised in church until high school, college, and then they just kind of fell out. That is one of the dangers of the generation today that you were just referring to. I just read a statistic, as a matter of fact. Tom Rayner put out the millennials born from 1980 to 2000 are the largest generation of all time, approximately 80 million. And of those 80 million, they have statistically put it at only 15% are born-again believers. Take that back to the generation that's prior to 1946, and almost 70% are born-again believers. So it's trying to meet those where they're at. I believe some of the challenges of our churches today are we're still trying to hang on to the same way we've always done things. And those millennials, that culture, that age group is looking at it that's not me. I appreciate that, but that's not me. And trying to meet them where they're at. I think that's one of the great challenges here in our area, because a lot of what they understand as church is, quite honestly, traditional from this culture. We're part of the Bible Belt here. So it's a challenge to meet them where they're at, not to change the message by any means. The message never changes, but it's trying to meet them where they're at. And that's a challenge, I think, for all of our churches.
Sure.
When it comes to mission work, mission, I suppose, I presume that in most churches, when you do mission work, it's wrapped around, or the mission of the church itself is encompassed by what you do inside the walls and outside the walls of the church. How does Olivet Baptist Church, under your leadership, operate within the mission of the church, inside the walls of the church and outside the walls of the church?
Great question. Some churches, when you leave the church building, when you leave the main doors or leave the parking lot, you'll see a sign that says, "You are now entering the mission field." I believe that that sign is great where it's at, but I also believe it should be on the door over the sanctuary as you enter, because I believe it's a mission field as well. It's a mission field that I believe Billy Graham says that he believes that there's some 15 to 20% of church members that have truly never made a profession of Jesus Christ. And so that is a mission field that we look at within the four walls, trying to minister to those, but also to our members who are born-again believers. When I think of mission, I think of ministry. I believe we have a tendency to put the two separately, but I think they're combined. When we do mission, we're doing ministry. We look at mission as going international, going across state. But within the four walls, trying to understand that Sunday school, as some would say, is a dinosaur, is not a dinosaur. I believe Sunday school is one of the greatest connecting points in a church. That's where relationships can get established, truly established, and developed. They're not going to happen in a worship service. My front is facing your back, and there's not much fellowship with the back of another person. So understanding that Sunday school is a mission ministry within our church, and getting people to understand that. Outside of our church, we just recently went on a mission trip with 4 other churches, talk about kingdom work. 5 churches together, 42 people, made a trip to eastern Kentucky, and spent 5 days working on a campus there, and just there was no such thing as my church, your church. It was just God. And it was one of the greatest experiences to have 5 churches, but we were really the church. And so those are the kind of things we want to do externally. We're also looking at some international trips, going back to Tanzania. But those are the primary mission. We also use our Awana and our Upward as a mission, internally as well as externally.
And so what you're saying essentially then is that there's not, it's not whether you're outward focused or inward focused. There's some sort of connection between the two. Am I reading you right on that?
Yes.
There should be some sort of relationship between those.
Very, very much so. I believe that's a challenge for many churches, that they get too inward focused.
Yeah.
Because what happens when you get so inward focused, then it becomes, what are you doing for me? It becomes the consumerism. It becomes, like Tom Rainer says, church membership is about perks and privileges, when that's not what God says membership is about.
Yeah.
What would you say to pastors who are starting out, for example? I won't call them baby pastors, but maybe baby in the ministry of pastoring a church. What would you say to them about some of the building blocks, maybe, that they should probably establish going into the church and getting to know the people, but at the same time realizing that ministry has to also take place outside the walls of the church?
I think one of the strongest building blocks that any pastor can do is to develop a process of learning, beginning a discipleship, biblical discipleship, the way we saw Jesus and Paul do it. Begin investing in one person, and then teaching them to invest in another person within your leadership. Because if you can get your leadership trained to spend time with another and teaching them, then that's going to trickle down. And then as a new believer comes in, or a new member, you can get them placed alongside with one of these people, men with men, women with women. And what happens is you accomplish many things. One, there's an instant relationship that gets built.
Yes.
And we know the statistics that if somebody doesn't establish a relationship within a few months, they're going to end up leaving. They are. They're going to feel I don't belong, and they're going to end up leaving. So getting that relationship established, beginning that process of making disciples, literally internally, and then also teaching them to go out and especially if it's a new believer. The greatest opportunity to win other people to Jesus Christ is when somebody has just come to Jesus Christ. Why? Because they have quite a few connections with those that don't know Christ, whereas those that have been in church for any length of time, their connections are a lot smaller. So I would encourage a new pastor to really invest in his leaders by training them how to disciple and to help them grow. Learn how to do Bible study. Learn how to journal. Learn how to memorize Scripture. Learn how to do those basic, what I would say basic spiritual disciplines that will go a long ways.
Yeah.
Pastor Joyce.
Yes.
And Pastor Skip, my granddaddy used to say, you can't what you ain't. And so disciples make disciples.
Yes.
And so the reason I ask that question is because I'm so afraid that maybe discipleship is not a priority in the 21st century church. We become so filled with technology and trying to connect with the world in order to get the world to come to church, that I think sometimes discipleship is not given the priority that it deserves.
I would agree 100%. I believe the priority is more on evangelism, when in reality, evangelism is a byproduct of strong discipleship.
What you are describing here takes a transition in mindset and time and priorities, not just among the church, but among the pastor,
Yes.
amongst the leaders. It's different from the leader who does everything or performs everything and other people receive than the one who trains someone. What are some of the challenges in making that? If somebody was a leader and they want to make that transition, what do you see as some of the challenges, or maybe even some of the things that would need to take place to make that happen?
Well, and what your grandfather said is the biggest challenge, because if this young pastor has never been through the process, they're not going to know where to start. And that's essentially what you're saying, whether it's a leader in church or a new pastor, if they've never truly been discipled or gone through a process where somebody has, we use the word mentor today, through the Word of God, they're not going to know how to do it. I would say if there's not someone in your church, there are tools out there. There are, first of all, pray for someone. I think that's the greatest thing anyone can do. Pray that God would bring someone into your life that is capable of leading you and training you and equipping you. If there's not anyone in the church, seek, there's different resources, seek those out. There's a new one that I've come in contact with, Operation Multiplication. It is one of the best resources I've seen in a long time to disciple people within your church. And they will train you, they will help you through the process. So that's a great tool today that I would strongly recommend.
And leadership expectations from amongst the people we lead and from the community, they're high today on pastors. I think maybe you'd agree with me that there's a lot of pressure on pastors that many people may not understand or may not know unless you're in the position or in that place. What do you think needs to happen? What you describe seems to me as someone who really has a sense of identity and a leader who really knows what they're trying to do. What needs to take place, do you think, for a pastor in terms of their own health, their own balance in life, family, ministry, emotional and spiritual health? How can we prioritize this in our church and be able to help pastors? What do you think?
Prioritize it in church or prioritize it for ourselves?
Or maybe both. However, yeah, either way.
Because it really is, it's a challenge both ways. Because we are tugged in so many different directions. And a lot of that is expectations that I believe is part of the culture in church. Expectations, whether they're real or whether they're not. But I think for me, one of the challenges is the time factor, like you were saying. I have to one, allow that time for study. One of the problems I found early on as a pastor was I was using my days off for study. Well, what I was doing through that was putting my family on the altar. I was
Absolutely.
sacrificing my family. And that took God hitting me with a 2x4 to recognize that. And so then it's actually setting time aside. Church members don't like that. They want you to be available. They want you to be there. But that time has to be set aside. That was the whole principle in Acts chapter 6 for the purpose of selecting the 7 men so that they could spend the time in the Word and prayer so that they could bring it.
Sure.
So it's allowing for that time of study, that time for personal, obviously the daily devotions, getting up early or staying up late needs to be done. But instilling that in church members to help them understand, that's a challenge because of the expectations. One of the things I have tried to do is stress the importance of that daily quiet time. When you have a daily quiet time and you get alone with God and make notes of that daily quiet time, spend some time in prayer, it has a great impact on your life. But it's also helping them to understand that I can't be there for everything. I try, but I can't. We've got some great lay people in our church that do an excellent job ministering to different aspects, different members in our church. And I appreciate that. But the expectation, and you probably know, is that where's the pastor? And so that's a challenge to overcome. To really be honest with you, I don't know the best answer for that.
That was a pretty good one, I thought.
Well, that was good. So that means that it's a work in progress. It's always a work in progress.
It is always a work in progress.
It's a challenge.
If people have not been to Olivet Baptist Church, what is the address of the church there, Pastor Parsons?
Well, we are located at 5186 Hinkleville Road. The best way to describe it is I do it this way. I say for the ladies, we're across the street from Kohl's. For the guys, we're across the street from Chick-fil-A. So that's the best way to describe
All right.
it.
I think that'll work. Yay, Coles. Okay. That's awesome. I've been in your church before, and I've worshiped and had the pleasure of ministering in song 2 or 3 times.
Yes.
And I must say that the congregation is so warm, and they have the spirit of family, of community, and of discipleship. And so when it's in the church, people who come in there, you guys get used to it. So, but when people, new set of eyes come in, we notice it right away. And I just want the area to know that those things are operating at Olivet Baptist Church, and it's a wonderful environment.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
We're going to wind down in a little while. So, Pastor Joyce, what final questions or comments would you like for Pastor Parsons to comment on?
I think, Skip, I just what really is your passion and your heart in terms of what, when you bring everything down, what do kind of you hope that your life produces for the sake of Jesus, for the kingdom's sake? How would you articulate that?
I think my greatest passion is to see fruit. And I think when Jesus said in John 15:16, he said, you know, I've ordained you that you should bring forth fruit. But he doesn't just say bring forth fruit. He says that your fruit should remain. And I think that last part of that is really critical. And that's the part that brings me the greatest pleasure and the greatest passion is when I can see somebody grow in their spiritual life and then they get it.
Yeah.
And they begin growing, and then they begin to invest in someone else's life. That's to me one of the greatest things that I could ever see. I love to see people come to know Christ, but that's just the beginning. That's just planting the seed in the ground. I love watching when those flowers grow and bloom, and that's the part I think we all like more than anything, if we're really honest. But if they're not growing and blooming, they're just going to get stagnant, and at some point they may even leave the church.
Yeah.
So my greatest passion is to see people grow and become all that God knows they can be.
Awesome. Great.
something else I was thinking as you were talking is fruit. And if you would, could you expand on that a bit for people who may not understand what that means?
Well, the fruit is a fruit tree produces fruit. And it's interesting, I recently read this. A fruit tree produces fruit naturally. Mm-hmm. It doesn't stress, it doesn't groan, it doesn't get out of sorts. It's a process that the tree does naturally. In the spiritual realm, fruit is a person that comes to know Jesus Christ as Lord. That is fruit for the kingdom. It's not about fruit for the church, it's about fruit for the kingdom, adding it to the kingdom. And that's what Jesus says, I am the vine, you're the branches, and you need to bring forth fruit. And when we bring forth fruit, then those branches get added, and then they too will bring forth fruit. So when a person comes to know Jesus Christ as Lord, they are added to the vine. They're added to the kingdom. And then it's up to us to help them understand that their responsibility is ultimately to bring forth fruit as well.
Well, Pastor Parsons, we appreciate you so much. We appreciate the great man that you are, the husband, the father, the pastor of Olivet Baptist Church, and we thank you for the spiritual and impact, the total impact that you bring into this community in this region. And we're grateful that you took time to be here. And Pastor, what would you like to see as we sign off? Because we're going to say goodbye just for this segment, because we're going to be coming back with someone else.
Yeah, I would just say we just got started.
We just got started. Thank you from the heart of collaboration with Pastor Nathan Joyce of Heartland Worship Center and I. We're grateful for being part of your viewing audience.